Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Other Side of Rock Bottom, the show where we talk real recovery, real life, and real hope. If you're new here, I'm your host, Kathy, and I want to thank you for joining us. If you find these stories inspiring, or helpful, please take a second to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who might need a little hope today. You never know whose life you might be changing by sharing a story. Today, I'm honored to welcome Jayme to the show. She's here to share her journey, the ups, the downs, the rock bottom moments, and most importantly, what life looks like on the other side of rock bottom. My hope is that you hear Jayme's story. You'll see that her recovery is possible no matter how far down you've gone. So, good evening, Jayme, and welcome. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's dive in. What was life like in the beginning? I know life is good now, but take us back to early life. What was life like before recovery, growing up?
Life growing up, I was always good in school. My parents were together. They divorced probably, I think I was about in third grade, but like they were always involved. So like they were always around. I have an older brother and grew up in small town Indiana, and there wasn't like I think we had one flashing light in that town, and my graduating class was like not even 100 people in it. But I graduated with honors in 2005. But during school, like I didn't have, I mean, I had friends. I was like friends with every clique, but I never fit in anywhere. Like I was a band geek, I was in choir, I played sports, but I never really fit in art, and I majored in art. That was ended up what I ended up going to college for the first time I went to college. Um, but I was plain, I got into when I was in high school, I got into the my first relationship ever. I was a there was it I think it was my sophomore summer going into my junior year in high school, and that was like the first time like anybody ever gave me the time of day, like anybody ever, you know, l- paid attention. So I kind of held on to that, and um I think it was about my senior year. We were together my sophomore that year, junior, and then my senior year. We ended up being together for 13 years, but um the first instance of some stuff happening, I was at school. We were at school one day, and I don't even remember what the argument was about, but it was something to which my head got shoved into a locker, right? Um And I know there was a teacher there. He ended up coming to talk to me and him after the fact, so I don't think he saw him do it, but I was already trying to cover it up for him. Like, oh, he's just fine, oh, whatever, all these things, right? And I guess because of the situations I'd seen, because my family, they're alcoholics, they all drink. My parents separated. They weren't ever violent, me and my mom never really got along a whole lot, but my dad and my stepmom, they drink a lot, and there was always fighting. So like in my eyes, I guess it was more like that was normal, and that was
Mhm.
how things were supposed to be, and you hush hush, just keep it quiet. So I graduated in '05, and during that time, even high school, there was different types of abuse that kind of continued on. And then we moved away. I moved away to go to college in Ohio, and got pregnant when I turned 21 when I had my oldest son. And we moved back to Indiana then, and things just kind of kept getting worse. Like I was covering up everything that he did almost. Like and giving justified reasons because I didn't want to be alone. I think that was my problem. I just did. That's all I knew. I didn't want to be alone. I didn't know. I thought that's all I deserved. Like I thought that, that for whatever it was, I thought that's what it was. Um, and then, during that time, we, I I gave everything, we'd even spend our last dollars, so that you'd go drinking and smoke weed, and the weed would calm him down. So that'd me giving that last $5 for him to get high so that I wouldn't get my ass beat, pretty much is how it worked, but it never really ended up working out that way.
Right.
Um Fast forward a little bit to 20, let's see, my daughter was born in 2012. When I found out I was pregnant with her, that it didn't stop. I ended up one time getting thrown out of a car. I think I was like 6.5, 7 months pregnant with her, got thrown out of a car. Um, it was just constant. Like that was my life. 13 years, that was my life. Right after she was born, I thought I was at the point that I had enough of it and was gonna leave because, getting beat and cheated on and lied to and all that stuff, I was done with it, right? Thought so. But then I'm like, I'm gonna uproot, and I ended up transferring. I was working in retail. I was a store manager, so I put in a transfer to go out to Phoenix, Arizona. And I did, and I moved out there, but right before I was getting ready to leave, he's like, "You're not going without, you're not going that far without my kid, with me and not my kids." And I'm like, "All right." So, we made this deal that, we're starting fresh, right? Go out to Arizona, start fresh. But it really didn't. The past still came back up, and during that time, let's see, Rylan was probably, my oldest son was probably about 5 or 6. And, I relied on him at a young age to handle a lot of stuff that I had no business having him handle. But he was like he's the only one I had around,
Right.
when the anger would flare up, and, I would make Rylan, he had a drill, like hide mom's wallet, hide her money, hide their car keys. Here's her phone if we need to call 911 kind of thing. And like at 6, like he had to know all that stuff. um so I kind of made that kid grow up a little earlier than he needed to. About 2 years living there, we ended up getting married after, I think, 12 years being together. Thought marriage was gonna fix it, right? Thought, getting married, here's a ring, here's my last name, let's fucking change this shit and make it right. No, that was wrong. That was stupid. um, it didn't. It made it worse, and I barely got my last name changed legally before I was officially done. And um, I ended up calling my mom back in Indiana, and I said I just want to come home. We had another fight, and it was a bad one. And she got me and my kids plane tickets, and we flew back to Indiana. And I thought at the time I was done.
How old were you then?
I was, let's see, Rylan was born and I was 21, so 6 years, about 27-ish,
About
somewhere in
20.
there.
Now, up
My
until
daughter's 13, will be 13, so this was about 13, 12 years, 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
okay, so now up until this point, when you went back home,
Hmm.
drugs and alcohol or substances, or what was it that was a part of your life? Was it personal? Was it just him? How
It
did
was
that?
him. I didn't, at this point, I drank on occasion, but drinking wasn't my thing. See, I had to be the sober one all the time. I had to be the babysitter. I had to be the one that tried to keep the peace when his anger would flare up wherever we would go, and divert it all to me if I had to. So
So you're recovering from a lot of trauma then.
Oh yeah, that's my life in a nutshell. Is trauma and violence and abuse and mental abuse and all that fun stuff.
Okay, so not so much substances then.
Well, substance come later. Come later.
Okay. All right. So you
Yeah.
call mom and you go back home.
Yep. Yep. I go back home and then about I think I was there for about a month or two and he decided this is when he came back, you know. We when we're in those relationships, like if you've ever been in one, you know, it's really hard to it's all you know, right? Like it's all you know. You always think you can change them. You always think that if you love them enough, that you will love them into loving you. And I didn't realize that. I had to learn the hard way that that was not the case. Um, so we were separate for about 2 months, and he ended up flying back to Indiana. And we were living with my dad, and the very first night he got back, we were drinking, and should have known better. But you know, I was away from him for a couple months, so I thought that maybe he really was sorry. Maybe he really was trying to change his ways. But you know, when I had left, he had another girlfriend, and when I came back, I had hung out with a couple people, and I was talking about that. So we were having like an adult conversation, talking about what you know what had happened in the past 2 months. Well, it was okay for him to do what he did, but it wasn't okay for me. And that night, I got my ass beat so hard. I ended up in the hospital. I got dragged by my hair to the back of the field where my dad lived, where nobody could hear me. Um, my head got smashed into a cinder block so many times that when I remember looking up and I was just, I remember, I don't know. All I remember, the only thought I remember is, oh my God, like what's going to happen to my kids? Like that's all I remember because I thought that was it, you know? Finally, my dad heard, I don't know how he heard because we were far away from the house, but my dad heard, came out, which snapped him out of what he was doing for the moment. And then I just hauled ass to the house and took off running. And I even I went inside. My cousin was there. And I looked at him, and I have blood coming down my face, and I'm just like, how bad is it? And he, you know, he's like, where's he at? And I'm still at this moment still trying to protect him. I'm like, just leave it alone. He just drank too much. Just leave it alone, you know? And I ended up having to go to the hospital. He busted my jaw and black eye, you know, my face wasn't pretty. But we ended up going like 2 counties away because I wouldn't go to our local one because I again wasn't going to tell him what he did. So I lied and I went to a hospital 2 counties away. They asked me what happened, and I lied and told them I got mugged coming out of a bar. I didn't know who it was, didn't see their face. It happened so fast, and that was my story. But they knew I was lying, but they couldn't do anything, you know. I still, at that point, come back. I still was so confused. I didn't know what to do. Um, and I pretty much begged him to stay still. You know, that's where my mindset was, and um he even sat there for like the first or that couple months after that. He helped me put my makeup on to cover my face up every day, so nobody see. And the only people that ever knew that that ever happened was my dad and my stepmom and my cousin. Um, so at this time, I just had got a job bartending, and which was good and bad. Um, because he would just, you know, start coming in my bar. One night, so this is probably about 3 months later, um, I overserved him. But how do you cut your old man off when, you know, you don't, he's the lesser of the, either you give him too much to drink, and he gets mad, or he gets mad anyway. So I had hoped that he would drink enough that he passed out, and he ended up leaving me at work, took my car and left and went home. I ended up like just going to some friend's house, and I'm like, I'm just gonna wait here. I closed the bar down. I'm like, I'm just gonna wait here till about 3, 5 o'clock in the morning when I know he's passed out, and I'll go home. I'll sleep. We'll wake up. It'll be a perfect day. You know, it'll be okay. I went home and he was sleeping. I ended up sleeping on the couch. I woke up the next morning and, like we all do in technology world, pick up our phone. That's the first thing we do, pick up our phone, check our messages. And as soon as I did that, he comes from behind and just busts me in the back of the head. And I'm on the ground in my dad's house. My dad's at work. My daughter, I think Rylan, my oldest, he must have been at school. My daughter wasn't old enough to be in school yet. She was just barely 3. Um, my stepmom was there, and he was trying. At this point, he'd busted out my kneecap. This time, he blew out my kneecap, kicking me so hard. And then he tried to take my daughter and leave. And I'm fighting him to get my daughter to stay. And then my stepmom, even though I despise that woman, um, she called the cops that day and he got arrested. I wasn't gonna say anything. I didn't make a report, but they knew. Like, I mean, my face, my leg, I was bruised and beaten up. Like, they ain't stupid. And in most states, the state takes over the charges to speak on behalf of the woman, right? So finally, I was done. He went to jail and I was still contemplating things. I went to work one day and he called me and he's like, I got a bond. And then I'm like, okay. And I hung up and I called my dad and I started crying. I'm like, Dad, I think I'm done. And he's like, he's like, okay. And I'm like, what do I do though? Like, he's gonna call me. He's gonna do all these things. He knows I have the money to bond him out right now. He's like, don't answer the phone. Um, and he's like, he'll call me and I'll handle it. And so I did. I ignored his calls, and 2 months later, I ended up filing for divorce while he was in jail. And our divorce was finally finalized in 2015. I was free. This is when I was free, right? I finally was like, oh my God, I can breathe. I can do whatever I want. I can live my life, because for so many years I was like this hermit, and I was very quiet and shy, and I bowed my head down, like I had to babysit, I also had to babysit my whole life. I had 2 kids at this point, and I also had to babysit a grown man adult. And um, so I was like this taste of freedom. So roughly, I was still bartending in this time, and again, still not into drugs yet. And again, drinking really wasn't ever my thing. Like, I drank because I bartended, but it wasn't a go-to for me. Um, about 3 months after my divorce was final, I was working one night and a guy I knew from school, actually, it was like my first crush in like middle school, walks into my bar. Um, and we just reconnected and we started talking and then we started hanging out, and um, him and his brother, like, till to this day still, even though I have some hate in my heart for him, great musicians and things like that. And so we ended up getting together, and it was about, probably maybe a month into us dating. Um, we started doing Adderall. He introduced Adderalls to me, and we started snorting Adderalls on the weekend. And at this point, up until this time, like, I was that person that said, all those people that do meth, how dare they? Like, you'll never catch me doing that shit. Like, I was that person. Um, But it was, two weeks into doing Adderalls on the weekend, snorting them, that like, he's like, well, let's get some meth. And I'm like, I don't know. I was hesitant about it, but I gave him that trust because I knew that the lifestyle that he lived, that I'm like, he'll keep me safe. He'll keep me okay. He won't let me get strung out on it. Boy, that was wrong. I was wrong. Um, I, it was, it started out like I was working, and it started out like getting high on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, trying to, be cranky and irritable and sick so I can go to work on Monday or whatever, until I like realized that if I got high again, I wouldn't get sick. So I'm like, oh, I'll just do a little bits here and there. And then, it went to, I started meeting people and knowing, getting introduced to people. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be spending my money on this. Like, I want to make money. Like, I want to get high for free. And that's what that turned into. So, I started hustling and doing my thing. And, then that relationship was toxic, built on drugs and rock and roll, and um abusive in many fashions. And it was in 2017, so I'm 2 years into my addiction, 2 years into doing meth. I ended up breaking up with him, and at this point I had started to I started losing my jobs. I started getting fired from my jobs. I had one job where, um, I guess we'll back up for a second. That one boyfriend there, he actually ended up getting a hold of my dad and telling my dad that I was getting high and all these things. And I lied to my dad. My dad called me. He's like, well, this is what I heard. And I'm like, Dad, you know me better than that. Like, I lied to my dad. And for me to lie to my dad is the epitome of all things awful in my life, because it like gut checks me. And like, he's just there's like two people in this world that I could never lie to. Well, I don't lie anyway, but like, if I ever even caught, off, like, it's my dad and my cousin. And, um, or keep things from, I guess I should say it that way, keep things from. Um, so I get fired from this job, and my boss there, she was a really good friend of mine. Small town again. I live in a small town, so we all know each other. Her husband, actually, I went to school with. He worked with my dad, and me and her were pretty close. And she had to fire me because I, was breaching policy. And I did wrong. It was my fault. And when she fired me, I just started crying, and I just told her that like I'm been getting high, and that was the first time I ever openly told anybody. It was about 2.5 years into it. I finally literally openly said, hey, I think I got a fucking problem, right? Um, so then I called my dad from her office. She stood right there next to me while we were both crying. And I told him I got fired. And then I said, that's not it. I said, I'm also getting high, Dad. Like, I lied to you and I'm sorry. And he started crying on the phone, trying not to cry. And I asked him for help. I said, I just need you to take my kids. I need you to take the kids so I can get my head clear. I thought I could do it on my own, right? I thought I could remove it from my life. And that's what I attempted to do, but I didn't try hard enough. I basically tried to get myself back to where I was in the beginning, where I was sporadically getting high, right? Um, I started a new bartending job, and one night, it was about, I don't know, it was a month after I had asked my dad for help. Um, a sheriff came into the bar and served me custody papers with my kids. And my dad wanted custody of my kids. He didn't think I was trying hard enough, which I mean, in all theory, I wasn't trying hard enough. But in my mind, then I thought I was, and I was fucking pissed. And instead of at the moment thinking that I had a problem, that this is not okay, like I got angry. I went to the bathroom, I got high. Um, and then I thought, I would try to fight it in whatever way I could, but I just didn't fight hard enough. And I just started doing more and more drugs because at this point, um, I'm realizing that getting high is making me from stop crying. Like, I was also not, the come down, getting sick. It was curing that for the time being, but then it was, every time I'd be upset or crying or depressed or sad, it was, I'd get high to numb it all away. That's what I did. And that was my mindset, I'm crying here, get high. Um, 2017 is when I met my youngest son's dad. Again, small town. So I knew him from school. And I was homeless by then. I'd lost my house that I was living in, and I was kind of just couch surfing a little bit and ended up going to stay where he was staying. And that was my summer, that first summer, like, of whatever, and we, back on the back of a motorcycle all summer long, selling drugs, doing drugs, and working in a bar. That's what I did. Um, Ended up getting pregnant with my son in 2017. I found out I was pregnant that November. And I was still using, and I tried to quit as soon as I found out I was pregnant, but I couldn't. The pregnancy hormones, emotions, dope sickness, and all that, like, I couldn't handle it. But I was very honest with my doctor, and I told him, like, the first visit, I'm like, look, I do meth. And he and I was, those fears of women are like, we're gonna lose our baby if we're, I was just honest with him, and he told me, what I needed to do and how I needed to do it. So I just kind of spaced myself out and I weaned myself down. That's what I did. I'd get high one day, and then, like, say I got high on a Monday, then I wouldn't get high till Wednesday. And then if I made it them 2 days, I'd get high Wednesday, and then I'd go till Saturday. And then I just spread it out for the first part of my pregnancy. So by December 31st, or New Year's Eve was the last time I got high that year, and for the rest of my pregnancy up until um my birthday after Dex was born in September. But right after Dex was born, my youngest, we had nowhere to live, right? We were living with his brother, but his brother didn't want no newborn baby at the house, which rightfully so. I get it. He also had an accident where his mind isn't right, Um, so we ended up trying to go stay at my mom's house for a couple days, but that didn't really she kicked me out within 3 days of us staying there. So we ended up getting a tent from my brother, and me and his dad and a newborn baby lived in a tent. And the July, because Dex was born July 4th of 2018. So July heat in the summertime, living in a tent with a newborn baby. That was my life for a while. Still wasn't using again. I had still been clean after he was born. Um, and then we ended up, uh, I think we were out there. We was out there till the end of August, and then we started saying my dad let us come stay with him and my kids, which took a lot for my dad to let us do. And the drinking and the fighting and the arguing and the stress, like, and life and everything, I said fuck it. And because his dad was still getting high the whole time anyway, and I knew it, which it didn't necessarily bother me until I wanted to get high. And I'm like, I know you got some in your pocket, fucking bust me out of line, like, right now. And he was like, no. And I'm like, I didn't give him an option. And then I was getting high again. And we ended up leaving my dad's, went to go live with a cousin of his for a little while, and then it was just the hustling and the selling dope and having a newborn baby and getting high. That was my life. And we ended up, you know, living in a hotel. It turned into the hotel living because we had nowhere to go, you know,
Yeah.
and living in the trap hotel and the baby, and to the point where finally we would just drop the baby off at his granny's house and then leave. Say we were coming back the next day and never would, you know, we'd come back a week later. And then, you know, having the times that, you know, he was in the car with us and I was that, I was that person. I hid my dope in the fucking formula box, the, you know, the powder formula, like, cause I'm like, oh, if we get pulled over, then I'll never find it there. So the stupid shit that I did. Um, so after a time, we ended up, Dex just got, you know, we just ended up leaving him. And in 2000, it was about 2019, 2000, yeah, 2018, he was born. So about 2019, that summer, that's when I finally stuck a needle in my arm for the first time. And I did it out of spite. It, I always, I was always told, no, you can't do that. Just because I do it, don't mean you're going to do it. And I'm kind of like, well, you know, fuck you. Like, I'll show you. And boy, did I show him. Um, I did like a half-gram shot off the get go because I was that person. Like, if I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna show you that I could do it. And it I was gone pretty much. That was the part of my big spiral downward. And I, you know, I was doing almost 4 or 5 shots, half-gram shots, 5 times a day. That,
Wow.
and it was be every time that I would start to cry, I'd start to get in my head about my kids and start to whatever. That's what I would do. And it took me to a place where you know, I was very suicidal. I one day grabbed the knife off of his pants. He had a knife on his pant loop and we were arguing, and I just grabbed his knife and I slit my own throat, and I have a scar there where I tried to kill myself. And then like about 2 weeks later after that, I jumped off a bridge trying to be done then too. Um, so at this, you know, at this point, like all of my everything in my life is just a fucking mess. Everything that, you know, I was such in a dark place of not wanting to be here anymore, and I didn't, you know, didn't want any of it. I started to get arrested. First time I got one of the first times I got arrested was in November of 2019. And it was theft, you know. Us meth heads, we like to steal from Walmart. And I got arrested that night and ended up bonding out a few days later, day or two later or something. And then I got arrested again in December, you know, a month later. Then I got arrested one more time in January. This time I was in Ohio. And because I was homeless and because I was out of state, I didn't have a bond this time.
Mm.
So and this was a drug charge, or this time was a drug charge. And so I ended up sitting. I sat in CCNO over in Stryker, Ohio, and sat there. I was there for a few months. They kept pushing out my date, and there was they finally and during this time when I was in jail, that was the longest I had ever spent in jail. And I couldn't get a hold of nobody. You know, nobody put no money on my books. Nobody answered no phone calls. Nobody was there. Um, I did get a letter. I wrote my dad because I don't know how I remembered his address, but I did, and I thought it was. So I mailed him a letter, and I did get a letter back from him. And one of my last court date, or the last court date I had, he showed up with my kids to my court date, and I was so pissed because at this point I think Rylan, Olivia was just in kindergarten, first grade maybe, and Rylan was maybe 12, 13. Maybe no, younger than that. He was probably about 10. Um, so there, I'm embarrassed, I'm angry. Like, they brought my kids, they see me in these shackles, they see me in my jail scrubs. Like, I'm just mortified, mad, angry, pissed. And then I just turned around and I'm like, I just looked at I tried to make it a learning lesson right then. I'm like, look, this is what happens when you don't follow the rules. That's what I did. I turned around and told him that. And I remember my daughter just started crying, and Rylan was trying not to cry. They ended up releasing me, but however, I ended up having a warrant because I'd been there and I missed a court date. So I had to wait until I got extradited back to Indiana. Um, got back to Indiana. It was like I think I ended up having to wait another week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, and then I got extradited back. Um, got seen the judge, got released, and I called my dad and I'm like, hey, where you at? And he's like, oh, driving to Angola. And I'm like, hey, swing by the jail and pick me up. And he's like, yeah. So he picked me up, and the whole time I was over in jail, those previous few months, like, I was working. I was trying to get into recovery, but I really wasn't fully there yet. I really didn't know what I was going to do, but I had worked out a plea deal to go to uh, a detox in a facility over in Ohio. And so by this point, it's 2020. And as we know, 2020 is when COVID hit, right? So that's, yeah.
So is that when you reached the point that you just had enough?
No, no, not yet.
Oh, goodness.
Not
When
yet.
was that? What finally made you say enough of this shit?
It was after I got out of jail that time and I couldn't go to rehab because of COVID. I ended up going out and getting high again, and back on the needle off after the get. And at this point, I ended up leaving. I left Indiana and I went on a road trip. It was supposed to be a road trip to Georgia. And when I got there, the people that I went with, they ended up leaving me. They threw my shit out and left me there. And I was going down there to see a friend that I had known all through my days of school age, and he was kind of like a hippie drifter. So we were actually supposed to go pick him up and bring him back to Indiana, but instead I got left there on my stuff. So I was literally living in the streets in Marietta, Georgia, homeless. I literally slept in the woods. There was a couch by a dumpster that I slept by a few nights. Well, as much sleep as I could because I was still getting high. And I was, in an area that, no small town girl from Indiana had business being in. And, I was that person that sat outside the Circle K begging for change, with a sign on the exit ramps. That was me. I would go. There was a few nights that I'd found like this church, and there was a spigot back there, and that's where I would go shower, use the hose, and one wash off. So that lifestyle lasted for a few months, and then finally, I was literally sitting in the middle of the woods and I was crying, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, I thought back on my life, and I was, I graduated school, I graduated with honors, like I was a store manager, I was all these things that I used to do, and like how am I sitting in the middle of the woods? And then I realized where I was on the map, and that I had a cousin in Alabama, and I got her phone number, reached out to her, and then I was like got cold feet, and I told her everything. I mean the worthlessness I felt, how I had tried to not be here so many times, that I didn't want to be here. I told her I was doing drugs, and I told her absolutely everything. She's the first person I literally opened up to everything about my entire life about. And she's like, I'll come get you. And I hadn't seen her in over 5 years. It was over 5 years that I'd seen her, and we never, so I'm like, well, hold on. I didn't want to let somebody else down in my life. I didn't want to put somebody else in my bullshit again. But the thing with my cousin is she don't take no for an answer, and she don't really she's the one. She's gonna try to make you make the right decision, but if you act like you ain't gonna make it, she'll make it for you, and that's what she did. She drove 4 hours to come to Georgia to find me with her teenage daughter and her boyfriend. um and at this time, and still her health isn't good, but at this time she was going through chemo and had 13 heart attacks and a diabetic and all these health issues. And this woman drove 4 hours because I was family. And she said a family had no business living like that. And picked me up and took me back to her house in Alabama, where I slept and showered and slept and ate and ate and ate. And this whole time, see, she doesn't come from an addiction background. My family, my dad's side of the family, they were all drinkers, but she never did drugs or nothing like that. Um, so the whole time while I was sleeping in little amounts to me, I did not know that she was researching everything that she could find out about meth addiction and what I was going to go through, how she could help me in every way possible. And she ended up finding me IOP program, because again, 2020, there ain't a lot of stuff going on because of COVID, right? Um, but during the first couple of weeks, I had two things that happened to me, and this is why I believe in I believe in God, but the universe is my higher power. It's God's universe, but I always speak to the universe. I'm a nature kind of girl and all those things, right? So it was like the first week I was there. um that first week of withdrawals and sick and irritation and angry at everybody and whatever. I was trying to get somebody to come. I was talking to Dex's dad, my youngest son's dad, on the phone. I'm like, come and get me the fuck out of here. I just want to get high. I want to come home, get me back to Indiana. And we started arguing. He said no. And in my head, and nobody could hear this conversation because right now my cousin was outside. There was a Native American Indian man that had come, and he was going to build a porch for her, so they were outside talking about that. They had no idea this conversation was going on, and no idea the thoughts that was going on in my head. And my idea that was, I'm like, well, fuck this. I'll hitchhike back to Georgia tonight. And that's what I was going to do. I said, and I'm sitting here plotting it in my head. I'm like, all right, when she goes to bed, I'm going to go out. She knows I smoke cigarettes. I'll go out and smoke a cigarette, and I'll just leave and she won't know. So I calm myself down a little bit, and I'm like, okay, I need to go check on her because she's talking to this guy, right? And I go out there, and this man, he just stops and he looks at me. He stops mid sentence. He's like, don't go anywhere after dark. And I'm like, what? And she's looking at me like, what? And he's like, nothing is good that way. And he pointed in the direction to which I would have had to walk to go to Georgia. And he said, you stay here. You stay here. You have good life here. You stay here. And I'm sitting here, and my cousin's looking at me like, what? And I'm like, but I knew what I was thinking. So I stayed. I didn't go that night. And about a week after that, we were driving to my first IOP treatment. and in my intake and stuff. And she was telling me about giving me one of her Kelly lessons in life 101. And she's like, whenever you go through anything in life or anything's happening or anything's changing, she said, you're always going to see a sign to know that you're on the right path. She said, but you have to be open to it. And she said, but if you're open to it, you'll know. And I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about it and trying to understand what she's meaning by a sign, and also saying thinking she's kind of on some bullshit. And we ended that conversation because we stopped at a gas station and to get something to drink, and we both walk in and get some tea, and the clerk stops and just looks at me, and he's like, I don't know why I need to tell you this, but you're right where you need to be today. So what you're doing and where you're at, this is where you need to be. So don't give up on it. Don't doubt it. Just keep going. And she just got this grin on her face like, ha, I told you so. Told you so. And I'm just laughing, and I'm like, all right, I hear you. Like, I hear what you're saying. So I, did the IOP treatment, and at this point I didn't, I wasn't going to do any 12-step program. Not that I didn't necessarily want to, but I already felt like a nuisance and a bother to her. Like, she's sick. Like, she's already driving me around. She's, helping me get a job. She's helping me do all these things. Like, I ain't gonna make her go to all these meetings and all this bullshit. I'll figure it out on my own. Um, which was how my path is. I recommend anybody find their own path, right? I love the 12-step programs for people that use them and then they work them. Like, I think they're great. Just wasn't a me thing. But um we I finished the IOP program in November. I got a job as a CNA. I transferred my license down here in October. I got custody back of my youngest son. I moved him down here. And I did a lot of online searching on recovery because, again, COVID, there ain't a lot going on anyway, right? Um and that's when I kind of got the bright idea to, like, oh, what's Facebook have? And I ended up stumbling onto that's when I stumbled onto Drew Hicks, um and a couple other groups, but his was like the first person, and I drew onto him because I'm like, this dude's from Indiana too, and this guy can make it, like, no way. And I was this very, very silent listener for many, many years. And that's why I think it's so important for everybody to speak out, because you never know who's listening. Because that's me. I was a quiet person. I was listening, taking it all in. Um, I ended up, getting all my court shit transferred down here. Got my probation all transferred down here. Um, and our life was starting to go. Life has gone good. I had got my own house in 2021. I rent, but I've been here in this house for like 4 years now. Three. This will be the third year, fourth start of the school year. That I've had my kids. My oldest two, I got custody back of them a few years ago, 3 years ago, I think it was. They were only coming down finally. See, it took me almost 2 years into my recovery for my dad to trust me with my kids, right? And I was kind of getting pissed about that for a while. A lot of people do. But finally, my dad let him come down here to visit for the summer, and about 2 weeks to the end of the summer when they were supposed to go back, and I'm planning that trip back, he calls me and he's like, "Hey, my lawyer's calling you, and you're gonna sign this paperwork, and I'm giving you back your kids, so you need to get them in school." I'm like, "Well, all right." And then it was like, "Oh my God, go time!" Like, I have my kids, and now it's this, everything that I've been working for, and now I have them. Single mom, 3 kids. Kind of terrifying for a moment. Like, how am I? Because I ain't got nobody down here. I'm alone down here. And but I did. The first thing, I got him enrolled in school. Got him. All the whole mom thing. But the very first thing I made us all do is I got my kids in therapy. And we did therapy
Good.
because my kids, especially my daughter, I missed like half of my daughter's life. and because of my shit, and I see I was that addict that I stayed away from everybody. I thought they were better off without me, so I stayed away. Little do I know that I caused a lot of shit. My daughter has PTSD from and abandonment shit. My son, he does. He's like his mommy bottle shit up, but so we had to do that. We had to work through a lot of stuff. We still do that stuff today. um and I got my license back in recovery, and about 2 years ago, is really when I was watching all the online recovery stuff, and I'm like, man, like I think I can. The cockiness in me, I guess, I'm like, I think we could do this better. Like, I think I can do something a little different, and that's when we built the group Recover Out Loud. And I wanted it to have a team of people that come from every walk of recovery, and they do. I have people that you've done fentanyl, meth, alcohol, pills, heroin, everything. So that if somebody's struggling with something, they can relate to them, right? We can only relate to what we know.
Right.
And a team of people at different recovery lengths, because I can stay mindful of what it was like in my day one, but or my 30 days or 60 days or my first year. Like, I can stay mindful of what it was like then, but somebody that's a little bit closer to that, they're gonna know. So that's how my admin team set up at Recover Out Loud. And um, to where I took, we do meetings twice a day. We have a morning meeting, morning live every morning, and then a night live every night. The night ones are topic related, and the morning ones are just, start your day off on a positive note kind of thing. And then that's how I fueled my recovery, because I'd listened to other people, and it came to a realization a couple years ago, like, just because I didn't work a 12-step program, damn near everything that those programs teach you, I just did it, and I just did it in a different way, and I called it
Right.
something different. um and then about a year ago I ended up um joining in with Drew on his Clean and Sober That's What's Up page, and um kind of growing myself from there. And um yeah, it's about where I'm at today.
All right. So let me ask you this. What's one of the biggest blessings you've received in recovery?
That I can smile.
Mhm.
I
Good.
was I was such a sad person, and this was like prior to my addiction. I was a very depressed person. I remember having days where I would be like, "Am I ever? Is this my life?" Even prior to addiction, like, "Is this my life? Am I not ever going to be happy? Like, what the fuck is happy?" And now I can smile. Like, now I'm happy.
Right, right. What is that happy thing that happens? I know. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So listen, kiddo, maybe there's somebody watching tonight that's been through your struggle. What would you say to them right now? Somebody who might be feeling hopeless, that they might be sitting in the middle of the woods. What would you say?
I would say that there there's always a little it'll be the light in you somewhere that has that hope. And that's the little light that you gotta hold on to. And two of my biggest things that I had to overcome when I came into recovery was learning to love myself. That's huge. And I am very firm on the fact that I don't care what program that you run. If you don't learn to love yourself, nothing else is going to work right. You know, when you learn to love yourself, you learn your value, your worth. You also open your mind to whatever higher power that is for you. You start to accept things in a different way. You start to know your own worth and what you'll accept for your life. Because I learned to love myself, I was in a relationship. I was in one relationship. Well, now I'm in two. This is the second one I'm in right now. But I was in one. It took me 3 years to get into a relationship in recovery, and I don't know how I draw in the ones that I did back then. But it wasn't a good one. It was another one that was not good, very abusive and mentally hard and um because I had found my worth, like I knew when enough was enough this time. And or had I not, I'd probably still be stuck. You wouldn't probably be talking to me today.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you're absolutely right.
and then the other thing is to, remember that the past is the past. Own your shit. Own your shit. You did what you did. You can't sit there, and that's a lot of the thing. That was a lot of thing that I had to deal with. I was so hurt. I was so mad at myself for the shit that I did and put my kids through, especially that I held on to it. But I can't change the past, but I have to own it. I did it. We can't hide from it, because when you hide from it, that little piece in you, that little piece of guilt's a motherfucker, and it'll swarm you and consume you. And if you just own it and say, all right, yeah, I did it, now let's learn from it. Sit in it. I tell everybody, sit in it long enough to learn something from it, but don't sit in it too long.
Right, right. You're absolutely right there, my friend. And the one thing I, in my professional and personal opinion, believe that is not taught enough in recovery is anything to do with the self, self-love, self-esteem, self-worth, self-forgiveness, right? And those are things that you're absolutely right. When we find that self-love, we own our shit. It is what it is. We're humans, we're infallible, we're gonna make mistakes. But it's what we do with them, and we pick up and we learn and we grow. And it's so beautiful to see that that is what you have done. Listen, girl, I wasn't a 12-step girl myself necessarily.
Mhm.
I didn't AA, I did go to AA meetings, but because I was forced to.
Yeah,
But it wasn't for me. However, that being said, I agree with the 12 steps wholeheartedly. I think you could work those for any problem in life, right?
absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Thus, shameless plug, the title of my next book, The 12 Steps for Everyday Life, which is coming out at the end of this month. So I'm excited for that. Um,
Yay!
so Jayme, we always wrap it up at the end of the show by asking this one question. What does the other side of rock bottom mean to you?
Life, like it's life. It's understanding that we get theoretically we get one life to live, right? We only get one shot at living a life to whatever, however anybody believes, but that's what I believe. And I don't want to spend it miserable and sad and hating it. There's so much beauty in this world. There's so much ugly, but man, there is so much beauty. Taking the time to I'm a nature girl, so them sunsets, them sunrises, them sitting on the top of the mountains, those little moments like that, like enjoy life. That's the other side of it is you get that's the one thing my cousin one of the many things, but one thing that my cousin told me when I first got here, she says you have an opportunity to be whoever you want to be today. You don't have to be that person that you once were. You get to choose today.
That's
And
right.
that's what life's about. You get to choose. We got choices every day. Sometimes we make the wrong one. That's when we learn from it. But it's life. That's the other side of rock bottom is life. You get to live.
Oh, thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing your heart and sharing your story with us today. Listen, I know somebody out there is going to hear this and realize that they're not alone and that recovery is really possible. Guys, if Jamie's story has touched you, inspired you, or given you hope, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Every share helps us reach more people who are struggling, and it shows them that there is life, a beautiful life, on the other side of rock bottom. Until next time, I'm Kathy, and remember, your story matters, Your voice matters, and there is hope. Take care, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Are you terrified to face tomorrow? Some mornings feel impossible. But even in the darkest moments, hope is closer than you think. You're not alone. There's hope. Written by Kathy Simmons, a certified recovery coach, Welcome to Recovery is your powerful guide to reclaiming your life. With real stories, practical tools, and compassionate insight, this book lights the way, one page at a time. Whether you're beginning, recommitting, or supporting someone through recovery, find hope, clarity, and strength within these pages. Step into your new chapter. Welcome to Recovery. Take the first step. Get your copy of Welcome to Recovery today and begin your journey to hope.